Good morning. Welcome to King's Report News Hour, the 16th year of Tiangi, the 11th month and the 5th day of the heavenly calendar. Tim Elvis sitting in for the second king of Chenigu Hyungjimun. Of course, today is Christmas Eve. And as I've been saying, we don't need to emphasize the fact that this is not the actual birthday of Jesus. The important thing is that the world, or most of the world, has come up with a date where they celebrate the birth of Jesus. And I think that's a good thing. And so I think we don't need to pour water on the situation by talking about its actual or well, anyways. Um, so I hope you were having a wonderful Christmas season. You know, especially spiritually, although I suppose materially as well. I don't know. Anyway, today is the Wednesday. Today is the Wednesday, and so Wednesdays are when we uh, look at the when we look at the teachings of our true Father in the form of the original substance of the principle of a orderly poncheron. And let me be brave, since this is Christmas, and try to use the slideshow mode. See if my computer can handle it. All right, well, so far so good. Okay. Let me get rid of this here. There we go. Okay, yeah, well, we'll see how far we can get with that. All right, so I cannot see the slide number in this situation. What's this thing down here? Drag to move. Oh, I see. All right, still cannot see the slide number. All right. Anyway, we're now beginning a new section. To become God's true sons and daughters, number one, we must resemble God. And I think I've talked about the speech that Father gave. I was in this. I heard him give this in Berrytown once, and I'm not sure. I think it was before the seminary. I was in Berrytown from pretty much from October of 1974 all the way to July 1st or July 4th, or anyway, July of 1977. So almost 3 years. I was in I was in Berrytown doing nothing but going through one workshop after another, and then the seminary, which was a workshop in itself. And somewhere along the line there, I heard Father give a speech where he talked about resembling God. And I've talked about this before, but let me just remind you. He said, when you go to Spirit World, you're going to want to tell the people there that you are the son or daughter of the true parent. And then the person in the spirit world, I guess Satan or something like that, will say, "Well, how do we know that? How do we know that? How do we know that you are the son or daughter of the true parent?" And he asked us, "How are you going to answer that?" And no one could answer. And so he said, "You can say that you resemble me. You resemble me," which was quite, you know, no one was thinking in that direction. I can tell you that. So how do we resemble true Father? Well, how do we resemble him? Well, of course, I think it's easier to understand now. We resemble him in our character, in our spirit, in our Shimjong relationship with God, I think. And we can think about that for a while. And here in the slide, it says children must resemble their parents in the terms of their internal character, external form, and in maybe very few or maybe none of us had been blessed. Well, I guess some people had been blessed at that point, but very few people. So we actually did not share Father's lineage. But Father, in this teaching here, is saying that also uh, we must resemble God in terms of our lineage, and that's one reason that the blessing is so important. A true human being is a human who resembles God. who resembles God? Well, yes, because we are God's creation, and we know that the creation, whether it's an artwork resembling the artist or a statue somehow reflecting the personality and character of the artist as well, the creation resembles the creator. And so also human beings must resemble God. So here, how do we resemble God? So in Hananim, that's God. We have the Songsang. God has Songsang, Hyongsang, and Yang nature, Yin nature. It's he's a unified body. So also human beings, we have mind, body, and husband, wife, and husband, wife must be one as one body, and so be a unified body. God's Hananim's essential attribute is Shimjong, as hearted here is in parentheses, but we know that Shimjong is that irrepressible impulse of the heart to invest love in an object partner so as to experience love and joy. And also human beings that resemble God, the essential attribute, our essential attribute should also be Shimjong, true love and life and lineage and absolute sex. And the motivation for creation is Shimjong, because it is an irrepressible impulse to basically to create, right? Because we're investing love in an object partner means that we're creating. And for human beings as well, motivation for living is a Shimjong. And maybe we could get rid of these art words there, and I'm not sure. And creation, Hananim's creation is investing. He's investing himself and developing himself through creation, and also human beings by creating our character, the creation of our character. We are investing ourselves in the creation of our character and developing ourselves and living for the sake of others and sacrificing and servicing and practicing service or serving others, I guess, serving others so as to create our character. Hananim, or God, is absolute, unique, unchanging, and eternal. So also individuals should be absolute, unique, unchanging, and eternal in terms of the individual, in terms of the husband-wife couple, in terms of the family as well. Must be absolute, unique, unchanging, and eternal. And true love, Hananim has a true love, true life, and true lineage. He's with absolute sex, and human beings also having true love, true life, and true lineage, and absolute sex. So this is an important point about absolute sex, isn't it? That it allows us to resemble God. So we remain pure before marriage, and we maintain our fidelity within marriage because we want to resemble God. And because we want to do that, because that is what we were created to do. We were created as God's creation, and so we should resemble God as his creation. And one way to do that is to remain pure before marriage and practice fidelity in marriage. And so here, then God's responsibility is to create human beings who resemble his own nature, and human responsibility is that we are to resemble God, and that's our responsibility to become people who resemble God. And concrete details, Shimjong, true love, character, principle, order, law, and absolute sex, right? True love is what? True love is the love that flows from God's Shimjong. And it is a love that is for the sake of others, and it is a love that gives and gives and gives, and does not keep account of how much has been given. In other words, Father puts it as, you forget that you've given. To me, it's a little more, it's a little easier to understand if I think of it as you're not keeping account. You're not keeping account of how much money you spent on your kids' diapers, right? Or even how much money you spent on their school projects or whatever. Okay? A lot of money goes into raising children, but we don't keep account of that and expecting a return later on, right? Sometimes you hear of parents who do, but those parents obviously do not resemble God. Absolute sex is absolute divinity and character, and God's absolute sex, absolute divinity and character, and human beings, absolute sex, absolute character. And so by having absolute sex, we come to acquire divinity. We acquire divinity. And the completion of God's portion of responsibility is the completion of ideal oneness of God and humankind in love. And this is what is mentioned in the 8th stanza of the 가정맹세. 신인 의 일체 is the Korean word, right? 신인 의 일체. Shin is God, in is human beings, e is love, 일체 is one body. So oneness of God and humankind in love. So the conclusion, God is my parent and I am God's child. A true human being is a human being of absolute sex, 심정, and true love, resembling God. So this is what we are working on day to day. And so this is why we start the day, or it's a good idea for us to start the day by reading God's word, by Father's word, is doing hundoke in the morning, so as to get that clear water pouring into our muddy puddle of our hearts, so as to gradually over the years and decades, because we got a lot of stuff in there over the decades, to gradually make that heart a puddle of pure water, of clean water. Okay, why isn't this going down? Okay, here we go. Ooh, ooh. Look at that. I messed up. Hold on a second. I hit the wrong button. All right, okay. Phew. Okay, I hit the end button and went all the way to the end of the of the slideshow. All right, let's see here. Current slide. Okay. Oh, what did I do? Oh, I think I just try it again. Okay. Right. Let's try slideshow once again. Come on. Resume slideshow. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Okay. Oh, yeah, I see it. Okay. Do not want to go to the end right now, that's for sure. Slideshow from the current slide. Why isn't it going? Why isn't it working? Okay, it looks like I messed up really royally here, and it does not want to cooperate. Hold on a second. I think there's still hope. All right, well, okay. All right, I guess we will not do it in the slideshow mode. All right. This does not want, made one mistake and it is unforgiving, absolutely unforgiving. Slideshow from slide. Okay. Doesn't want to do it. All right, let's try slideshow. Let's see, we're on page 139. Let's try from the beginning. No, it doesn't want to do that either. All right, I give up. Okay, true education. Education. So, and this is my father's philosophy of education. So education is two aspects: human education and knowledge education. Human education is about educating 심정 and norms. So children need to be educated where their 심정 needs to be developed, right? And this is why we have the four realms of 심정. as we saw as we see in the third stanza of the family pledge. And those four realms of Shimjong, of course, are the child Shimjong, the sibling Shimjong, the husband-wife Shimjong, and then the parent Shimjong. So we learn those Shimjong in the family through the human education, and that's one important aspect of education, and also norms, right? So one thing about norms, I've talked about love requiring discipline. Can't just have sex with anything that walks along the path. There's norms, and there are norms in the family about that people learn in the family. Some families, for example, you sit around the dinner table, and each person has their own place at the dinner table, right? That seems to be less common now than it used to be. One reason is that now there are two-parent families, and I mean there are both parents are working, is what I meant to say. That both parents are working, and people are running in and out of the house, and dinner time is not quite the sacred meeting time that it once was. People having to work late and meetings in the evening and this kind of a thing. I hope that somehow in the future we can bring that back. I think that's a very important time. That was the way it was in my family when I was a child, and my father sat at the head of the table, and I sat on his. I was the oldest of four, so I sat on his right hand side, and then my brothers and sisters sat in the other four places around the table, and then my mother sat at the other end of the table, uh, near the stove and where the food was being prepared. So that kind of thing, I think, was part of really part of a very healthy culture that unfortunately has been lost over time. And it would be very good if families could restore that. So, so in order to become God's true children, we have to fulfill the three great blessings. And those are in Genesis 1:28, be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion over the earth. So that is the goal of education. Whole goal of education. Those three commandments, three blessings or three commandments: be fruitful, multiply, have dominion over the earth. And so then the education concept is that wholeness or completion of the individual. And that's, of course, the first blessing, uh, individual's character being completed through education. And the multiplication, in other words, by creating a family that is centered on God, and then the governance or completion of a dominion. In the education methods, the first case is the education of Shimjong. And the second case in the family is the education of norms. And in the third case, knowledge, education, and skills and ability. So today, schools do what? They focus on knowledge education, skills and ability, but especially knowledge education. And so kids come out of school with, well, a certain amount of knowledge, depending on which schools they went to. There's and how, their own ability to absorb what is being taught. There's a different level of knowledge, skills, and ability. But they're not doing what should come before that, the the completion of the character, and how to build a family that is centered on God and is able to have children and raise those children in God, and then how and governance, in other words, learning about the uh, governance of the world, of society and the world. So without that, just knowledge, skills, and ability, this is why society is falling apart right now. So education goal, of course, in the first case, a person of character, for a person to become a person of character. Second case, then through the multiplication, the family education, and the educational norms to produce good people. And then the third case then is to produce geniuses. In other words, develop those special abilities that unique abilities that God has given each and every person. Um, sometimes on the YouTube videos, I come across these videos of very young children, and you know, even 10, 11, 12-year-old children are using the violin to play very difficult pieces like Vivaldi and the Four Seasons of Vivaldi. It's quite amazing to see these children, and obviously they are particularly gifted. Not every 10, 11, or 12-year-old can do that. In fact, it's probably a very small minority of children who can do that. But that kind of ability, I think, is actually latent in every child, and it's the purpose of education to bring that out. And today's education, of course, is doing that only in a very, very rare circumstances, very rare circumstances, unfortunately. All right. Oh, look at that. Okay. That's where that is. Okay. Well, no wonder I couldn't. I think I'm understanding this now. Okay. I think I understand now why I couldn't do a slideshow. Now let's try it. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That. All right. All right. So here, um, Matthew 7:21 says that he who does the will of the Father will enter heaven. And the will of the Father, of course, is Genesis 1:28, for us to be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion over the earth. Okay. And so these four position foundations here are giving a graphic representation of what we've already learned up here. It's the mind and body centering on, have a give and receive, centering on God. And then is human, Human, and from there we are able to develop our divinity and our shimjong, and this is the perfection of the temple, and this creates the oneness of God and human beings in love. Okay, and then a man and woman who have completed their character have given and received action centering on God, and then the result here is a child, that's a child, and producing a people of goodness. Of course, this means that the family and many families come together to form a tribe, and then many tribes come together to form a nation, and many nations come together to form the world, and the physical world and the spirit world come together to form the cosmos and then God. So the 8 stages of a horizontal restoration or horizontal creation are represented there. And then human beings and all things, of course, being the entire creation, including the angels, all creation, including the angels, excluding human beings. And so there's give and receive there. And then there's the, uh, what is this? Ideal world, okay, ideal world, okay, that is resulting from there. So we need to educate clearly about God, the spirit world, the true parent, and the restoration through indemnity of and to live the principle. And this may sound familiar. That's because we need to remember that these 6 things that we need in order for the world to be a place of unity is well, first one is a certain knowledge about God. Number 2 is certain knowledge about the spirit world. Number 3 is certain knowledge about the true parent or Christ. Fourth is, I think it was the restoration through indemnity. And then there was the also 2 others were, one was the about the human portion of responsibility. And I can't remember the 6th one right off the top of my head. So much of that is being taught here in this education. And, public school is not going to give you this, give child this education. So much of this has to happen in the family, and that's what the family is for. And unification education fulfills the three elements of unification of culture, unity of 심정, unity of thought, unity of lifestyle. The core true education concept is love God, love humankind, and love my nation. And this, of course, has been the motto of every school that Father has founded, starting with I think the first one he founded may have been the Little Angel School, the Sonhwa Hagwon in Korea, and assume it's still there, but they used to have this motto on the gate above the school as the people would enter: love God, love humankind, and love the nation. Okay, let's see if I can do this without ruining everything. Okay, there we go. So, section 5 here, dual characteristics are the key to solving all the problems of the world. Wow, that's quite a bold statement, isn't it? But if all the problems of the world have a common cause, right? Then if we can identify that cause and resolve that, whatever that is, that cause, then it would follow that we can solve all the problems of the world in one fell stroke like that. And that's what Father's teaching is based on. What is wrong with the world is actually the human fall. And so if we can indemnify the human fall and correct that, and recover everything that was lost in the human fall, then over time, not immediately, but over time, all the problems of the world will work themselves out. And so this is why we can say that Songsang and Hyongsang are the master key that basically opens all doors. Okay, so and God has his internal nature, and the Songsang or internal nature, Hyongsang or external form, and human beings created through God's and Songsang is also in parentheses God's Shimjong, which is his core attribute. Human beings have internal nature, that's our Songsang, our internal nature, our mind, and Hyongsang, external form or body. And all things were created with human beings as the model. So, when Jesus says that before Adam was, I am. So people say, okay, well, that means that Jesus Christ, the actual body that the people 2,000 years ago saw and talked to and everything like that body actually existed, that the physical body of Jesus existed before the creation of the earth and before Adam and so forth. But Father's teaching is that that's not what Jesus meant. What Jesus meant was that he is, of course, until that time, the one and only completed human being, completed man, completed man. And uh, he represented, and he is the blueprint from which all of nature came into being, including whatever is out there in the universe, all right, billions of light years away. That all came from the blueprint that Jesus represented. So this is why we say that all things were created with human beings as the model. All things, of course, being all of God's creation, with the exception of human beings. Accordingly, all places where people gather and live should fulfill their value and purpose for existence through a balance of Songsang and Hyongsang. So a balance of Songsang and Hyongsang. And here, let's see here. So we have here a number of examples here. So in the family, the Songsang or internal nature is the family ethics, and in the external form is the parents and children. And so the family ethics and the parents and children are like the mind and body of the family. They have a give and receive, and that's what constitutes the family. So in a school, education principles, a school has its principles, And if the family is educating, then the family has their education principles. Maybe the children are not even going to school, okay? But there are the education principles. And then there are the teachers and students who are the external form of the school, okay? And in a company, you have the company goals or the sort of the ethics or morals of the company. And then you have both the managers and employees. I don't like the word laborers here, but anyway, employees, and they constitute the internal form and external nature, internal nature and external form of the company. And in a country, you have the guiding principles, and here you have the leaders and the people. In the world, you have the world of, oops, here, I don't want to go quite there yet. Let's go back up. You have the ideology of world peace and unity. Okay, ideology of world peace and unity. And here, humanity and nations constitute the internal nature and external form of the world. So a Songsan type value system must be established, and unification of value systems leads to absolute goodness, the life of Shimjong, the life of living for the sake of others, because Shimjong is that irrepressible impulse to invest love. Investing love means what? Living for the sake of others, living for the sake of others. Sometimes people will, let me just talk a little bit about love, because sometimes people misunderstand about love, right? If you give peanut butter brittle candy to a person who is allergic to peanuts, is that love? Obviously not. It's the opposite. It's the opposite, right? Or, sometimes people, well, so and so is in the hospital. Let's go visit him, and they take flowers, but the patient is allergic to pollen, right? Is that love? Obviously not. Okay, so love implies if you're going to love something or something or someone, you got to know that person or that thing, right? If you're going to love a pet, for example, right? I don't own a dog, but I'm told that dogs must not eat chocolate. That actually they can become very seriously ill, for example. So obviously, someone who owns a dog needs to know that, and they need to know the kind of food, and also, of course, they get advice from their vet, I'm sure. Um, anyway, so love requires knowledge. And so also with plants, you say someone has a green thumb. Well, someone who has a green thumb is basically someone who is well versed in the nature or what plants need, how much water, how much fertilizer, if it's fertilizer, how much, what, how to space the plants when you plant them, and how deep you want to plant the seeds. If you plant them too deep, then they can't sprout. If you put it too shallow, then the birds may come and peck away the seeds and so forth. And so the person with a green thumb has that kind of knowledge. So they're able to love the plants. So love requires knowledge. So if you're going to love a person, spouse, for example, you got to know that person. You got to know that person. You have to study that person. And well, take it from a person with a few decades of experience. Um, there is no limit to how much you can learn about your spouse. There is no limit. I sometimes think that my wife is a little piece of God's eternity, and therefore even a little piece of eternity is in itself, or I'm sorry, not eternity, infinity. She's a little piece of God's infinity, and even a piece of infinity appears to be infinite in itself. So you got to learn and study and understand, and then figure out what he needs or what she needs, and then to then figure out how to supply that. And the King's recent lectures on the true love hormones is quite helpful in that respect. And if you have not uh, availed yourself to the benefit of those that lecture or lectures, I definitely encourage you to do so because it is, I think, extremely helpful to someone who is in the process, and which, by the way, is all of us, who is in the process of building a relationship. That's all of us. That's all of us. We are in the process of building relationships. All right, let me see if I can get back now. All right, hopefully I can get back. Yes, success. Okay, I'm getting good at this. All right. All right, let's see here now. Let's go to the next page. Oop. Just when I thought I was getting good at it, it stopped cooperating again. Okay, there we go. Yang and yin. Now, in Eastern philosophy, it's not yang and yin, is it? It's yin and yang. But there's a special purpose in calling and referring to it as yang and yin as opposed to yin and yang, as attributes of song sang and hyung sang and the resolution of real problems. So God, the parent, has a song sang and hyung sang, and so these are this is the more fundamental dual characteristics, and then there's the yang and yin, which are the secondary or antecedent, and then human being, completion of character first, or individual perfection and discipline, and then from there you can go to the union of husband and wife, family completion, and household governance. So this is a secondary. So the completion of character is more important. Yeah, but of course we are in the process of restoration, and so we get blessed at the top of the growth stage, which is where Adam and Eve fell, and so we are being blessed before our character is complete. So that means that not only is my character incomplete, but also my spouse's character is incomplete. So we need to go into it with that understanding that we're not being blessed with someone who is perfect. And I'm not being blessed as a perfect human being or a completed human being. Some people seem to be shocked when they find out that their spouse is not complete or not perfect, that they have problems. Yes, but it is your responsibility to help them resolve those problems, to grow through those problems. Okay, so don't be surprised when it turns out that he or she has problems. We all have problems. Okay, that's the whole purpose of this thing. If we didn't have problems, we wouldn't need a Messiah. Okay. All right, the final revolution. So until now, there's been the Industrial Revolution, and there have been political revolutions and religious revolutions and cultural revolutions, especially in China, for example. But did they solve problems? No. Did they create a unified world of peace? No, they didn't. Did they create a happy world? No, they didn't. So what is the revolution that we need in order to bring about a unified world of peace? In other words, the Cheonryuk, in other words, the kind of kingdom, the kind of human society that God originally intended, right? We need a human revolution. And past revolutions were carried out by guns and swords and force. How will the human revolution take place? Through true education. And this is why God is not a dictator, he is an educator. He's an educator. And so even in the Garden of Eden, God was not a dictator, did he? He did not intervene. He could not interfere in the portion of responsibility of Adam and Eve. And so today also. So he is not interfering on a portion of responsibility. Instead, he is what is educating us right now through the OSDP. Is educating us. Adam and Eve, he educated them. Do not eat of the fruit. How we respond to that education is our portion of responsibility. Adam and Eve chose to respond in one way. And we know what that is. That's in Genesis chapter 3, verse 6. Hopefully, we will respond in a different way to God's OSDP education. And what will be the instruments of the human revolution, true love and principle, with their source in the Shimjong of God, the irrepressible impulse to invest love in an object partner so as to experience love and joy. And so then this is the human revolution. These little boxes, I think, represent things that I don't have a font for apparently in my computer. So the Shimjong revolution is the root, and true love is like the flowers and the fragrance comes out of the Shimjong revolution. And then true love produces true character, which is the fruit. And the absolute sex revolution creates the true family, the true families, right? Each of us, of course, need to create true families. We're a ways from that, but I think each generation will get closer and closer and closer. And we're going to get there as a whole, as humanity as a whole. We are going to get there. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, a lot of terrible stuff going on right now. There's evil that we cannot even imagine going on right now. But eventually, everyone is going to make it. Okay, so praise God, praise God, praise God. All right, so then section 4, in terms of the relationship between God and the creation. God, of course, has a Songsang, his internal nature, his Yongsang, his external form. And then there's the Yang and the Yin. And the Hongsang has its Yang and Yin attributes. And then with the through the principle of creation, God, he's projected into developed into individual truth bodies, and this is how all things are, all created things. So in the relationship here, in the subject and object relationship here, then God is in the subject position, all created things are in the object position. God is the cause, creation is the result. God is internal, creation is external. God is vertical, creation is horizontal. God is invisible, and creation is tangible or substantial. And God is the masculine subject partner, all right? Don't say otherwise. He's the masculine subject partner, and creation is the feminine object partner. Okay. So here then, all created things, but human beings are created in the image of God, whereas all things, the rest of creation, are symbols of God. And so Father makes the distinction that the image is like a map, for example, of a map of the United States, whereas the flag of the United States is a symbol of the United States. So that is the distinction between human beings and the rest of creation. Human beings have mind and body, but there's a yang mind and a yin mind and a yang body and a yin. In other words, this is a male mind, female mind, male body, female body, okay? And then all things as well. Yang and yin, internal nature, inner nature, yang and yin, inner nature, and also out of form, yang and yin, inner nature. So human beings, because we are separate from all other things, what makes us unique? Well, we're able to imitate the calls, I guess you say, of all other animals, of all animals. People can imitate a monkey or a lion or and but all things will have their unique calling or their song. And human beings are able to possess all, and all things have their own elements and qualities in nature. And then human beings, like hair on our body, is similar to the plants that are growing out of the earth on the earth, or the dirt on the earth. And the skin is similar to the earth's crust, and the muscles like the substrata, the veins like the underground waterways. skeleton like the rocky mantle, and the bone marrow like the molten core of the earth. So in the I Ching and the Bible, comparing the I Ching and the Bible from the perspective of the principle of creation, I Ching, of course, being a book of philosophy. I think it's in Taoism, I believe, that they have as the I Ching. And there's some letters missing here, but it means the great. I Ching means or they have the Teguk or Cook Teguk. Yeah, that's the great ultimate, the great ultimate. And the great ultimate has yin and yang. And so in principle and father's teaching, it's yang and yin, but in the I Ching, it's the yin and yang. And then they talk about the five elements, and that's just where all things come from. And yin and yang produce the Tao. And the Tao is a Chinese word that means the way. It can mean road, or in Japanese, to. And so, judo, for example, or yudo in Korean, to is is in that meaning right there. Or sword fighting, kendo in Japanese, or komdo in Korean. What other examples? Anyway, the way, pado, the way of tea way, right? The way of tea. So the way is a sort of philosophical understanding or spiritual understanding of the way. And the Tao and Taoism teaches one yang and one yin. This is the way. And the way is the word. And this connects to John chapter 1, verse 1, where John says that in the beginning was the word. And so Jesus is being described there as the word, the word of God. In the Bible, of course, God spoke. He said, "Let there be light," and He's created through the word, and this produced all things. So, in the principle, it bothers me that we're not getting a lot of these characters. I wonder if I can exit the. Oh, I'm going to try to. No, it's just as bad. Okay, all right. Does not improve. I was thinking that maybe by exiting the slideshow, that we could get more of the letters that are missing here, but it turns out not to be the case. Yeah, or we're gonna have to change the color of those letters, in order to make it right. So in the principle, so we have the principle, we have I Ching in the Bible. So in the principle, God has a Song Sang and Hyung Sang, and Song Sang with Yang and Yin, and a Hyung Sang with Yang and Yin. The fundamental issues of the I Ching and the Bible are explained by the principle of creation, allowing for the unification of Eastern and Western philosophy. The I Ching has the Tao, and the Tao does not have either Song Sang or Hyung Sang, but it only has the Yang and the Yin. So it cannot explain that God is a being of character or personality. It only talks about Yang and Yin. The Bible with God also does not talk about Song Sang, Hyung Sang, God the Father, and this explains that God has personality, but does not explain God's attributes. God has personality or character, but does not explain God's attributes. And Christianity says, okay, well, God is love. Okay, but just how is God love? That's not explained in Christianity, where we know from the principle that God is love, because God's essential attribute is Shimjong. Shimjong is that irrepressible impulse to invest love in an object partner so as to experience love and joy. And so what flows out of God's Shimjong, his essential attribute, what flows out of there is true love, true love. And we also know from the principle that God cannot experience love himself unless it is first invested in a object partner. This is why God had to create the creation as his loving partner and human beings as his as his loving partner. And this is how we know that completed human beings will be God's perfect objects. A perfect object means what? That we're in horizontal relationship with God, not a vertical relationship with God, but a horizontal relationship with God. So Western and Eastern ontologies, from the perspective of principle of creation, the original substance or the ontology of the West is that and here we're talking about the Greek philosophy here, ancient Greek of forms, as in refers to Plato's theory of forms. So Plato's theory of forms and material, like Songsang and Hyongsang, internal character and external form. Whereas in the East, and this is basically Taoism, the yin and the yang, and yang nature and yin nature. So we understand that these can be developed in this way, so that they can be so the East and West can be unified, and there can be a unified philosophy of both the East and West. And so Western ontology and Eastern ontology can be unified and have there can be a unified culture. So then section 2, Roman numeral 2, universal prime energy, give and receive action, and the four-position foundation. No. Okay. Universal prime energy, existence requires energy. Existence requires energy, yes. When your battery's dead, you're no longer existing. But to put it plainly, right? Yes, keep that battery charged up. Universal prime energy is the fundamental force for God's existence. And it is the causal force that gives rise to the energy that allows all created beings to exist. So, universal prime energy, the fundamental force for God's existence, means that there's energy being created constantly within God. And that has to be true because that is then the causal force that gives rise to the energy that allows all created beings to exist. And so this is how we can say that God is continuing to invest energy into the universe. And so the Big Bang Theory is wrong if it says that the total amount of energy in the universe is finite. I think they say that, in the beginning there was something very, very small, maybe something like, I don't know, 10 centimeters, I think they say. And somehow this thing, for some reason, exploded, bang, in a big way. So therefore, Big Bang. But there is no other energy that is coming into the universe aside from what was in that 10 centimeter thing. I think that's how the Big Bang theory talks. And of course, it's expanding, and it's been expanding for billions of years. And at some point, one of two things will happen, they say, I think. One is that when the energy is completely dissipated, the universe will simply become cold. And basically, its battery will run out. The other is that, oh no, it'll just collapse in on itself billions of years from now. But Father says, no, neither of those is true, that actually the universe will continue to expand infinitely and eternally because God is continuing to pour energy, invest energy into the universe. Because why? Because God has this irrepressible impulse to invest energy, to invest love. And that's basically energy, invest love in his creation. And so God cannot stop creating. He cannot stop creating. If he stops creating, he's not God. He doesn't. He himself cannot exist without creating, because it's an irrepressible impulse. Okay? Without exception, all existences require energy and force in order to exist. This is true for God as well. God himself also requires a force in order to exist. Universal prime energy is the fundamental force that generates the energy required by all beings created by God for their own existence. Because God is absolutely unique, eternal, and unchanging, the force of God's existence, namely universal prime energy, is itself absolutely unique, eternal, and unchanging. So universal prime energy is absolutely unique, eternal, and unchanging. It's eternal. I mean, it's going to continue. It's going to continue to produce the energy. So it's going to continue to act as the causal force that it gives rise to the energy that allows all created beings to exist. So I think science still is trying to catch up with this idea, and I expect that they will as time goes on. They're going to discover this. Right now, they don't quite understand. And they're learning more and more about the universe, but they're really just scratching the surface still. So let's take a look at give and receive actions. So we have universal prime energy. Remember, the universal prime energy is what? It's the fundamental force for God's existence and the causal force that gives rise to the energy that allows all created beings to exist. All right. So we have universal prime energy. That's the UPE. Okay. And then we have the Songsang and Hyongsang of God's Songsang and God's Hyongsang. Okay. And then from there we get the energy, and the force of give and receive action. So when there's a universal prime energy engages in give and receive action between when Songsang and Hyongsang within God engage in give and receive action centering on the universal prime energy, then the energy that allows all things to exist comes about. Okay? That gives rise to the energy that allows all created beings to exist. Okay? So this universal prime energy is the cause, the subject, and the internal, and the force of give and receive action is the effect, the object, and it is external. And this is the relationship that they have. And in this energy, then, what does it produce? It allows existence, multiplication, and action. And it cannot have existence, it cannot have multiplication, it cannot have action without this give and receive um, force of give and receive action. So the relationship between Songsang and Hyongsang and give and receive action, Songsang and Hyongsang and give and receive action. In the Worldly Poncheron, that's the worldly means principle, right? Worldly means principle, and Ponchero means main body of the principle, or we prefer to translate it as original substance of divine principle, which is the unification principle. When Songsang and Hyongsang establish a reciprocal relationship, here we got a reciprocal relationship going on here, to form a reciprocal common base, the phenomenon of giving and receiving something takes place. This phenomenon is what we call give and receive action. Now, reciprocal common base, for example, one one example that I like to give is um, let's see here. Was I sharing that? Yeah. One example I like to give is if you're in a foreign country where you do not speak the language, okay, and someone is cursing you, but you can't understand. There's no give and receive there. There's no relationship there because there's no reciprocal common base. Language is the reciprocal common base. If you could understand what he's saying, right? And these days, thanks to these translators on our phones, it's actually much easier to understand, unfortunately, sometimes. Then we may become upset. And that's a give and receive. Then we have a subject-object relationship, and we're having give and receive, right? He's cursing me and everything like that, and I'm just sitting there, okay, I don't know what he's saying, but he seems to be upset, but I have no idea what he's saying. There's no reciprocal common base. But in a give and receive action, for there to be a give and receive action, there must be a reciprocal common base. Okay? And without that, there is no give and receive. There is no give and receive action. Okay? When Songsang and Hyongsang establish a reciprocal relationship to form a reciprocal common base, the phenomenon of give and receiving something takes place. This phenomenon is what we call give and receive action. Okay. Yes. All right. So I think we're going to stop there today. We'll go to the next slide next time. Thank you for joining today, and God bless, Godspeed. May His kingdom come, and Merry Christmas.